No, I can do it, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Berry,
Yes, I'm here.
Ms. Bowling Lewis, Ms. Chiarelli, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. Graves, Mr. Harrison,
Here.
Ms. Lovell, here, Ms. McGowan,
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Here.
Mr. Morley. I thought he was, yes, okay. Mr. Rotella,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Whitten,
Yes, here.
and Vice Chair Strobel.
I'm here.
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Great.
Ready for the approval of minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion carries. We have a new member with us tonight. Name is Chris Rotella. Chris and I we met, well, families known each other for quite a while, but we met about a year and a half ago and co-founders of the charity Hope for Hopetown over in the Bahamas. And we'd like to welcome Chris to the group. Would you like to tell us a little something about yourself?
Thank you. Yes, it was an honor to work with you, Ed. You have a lot of passion, and when I saw your name on the list, I knew that this would be something worth getting into. So my name is Chris Rotella. I am born and raised in the city of Fort Lauderdale. My parents live in Coral Ridge, and I recently just bought my first home, which is in the Landings. I am extremely enthusiastic when it comes to the waterways and the intercoastal. I scuba dive. I'm an avid boater. Unfortunately, I had a boating accident a few years ago when I was actually on a boat that caught on fire and burned 65% of my body. So I understand, some of the good things that happen on our waterways and some of the bad things, as I've also lost a few friends in boating accidents. So I scuba dive, I fish, and I have an interest in trying to figure out a way how I can help the team in clearing up the waterways and making them as clean as possible, and also have an interest in trying to figure out how I can also make them as safe as possible for hopefully my kids one day that I don't have yet.
Welcome
Thank you,
aboard.
Chris. Welcome
Thank
aboard,
you.
and look forward to working with you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Chris. Roseanne Lovell, welcome aboard.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Roseanne is the reason that I had the opportunity to get onto the board, because I ran into her at the air show. So I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully I can help the team.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. Officer Mills, would you like to go over the Waterway Crime and Boating Safety Report?
I would. Can you hear me? I can't see if my light's on. All right, there we go.
Can hear you fine, thanks.
Good evening. During the month of January, the Marine Unit issued 43 citations, 72 warnings, conducted 7 safety inspections, handled 1 boat accident, and handled several incidents. 2 burglaries where a unlocked salon door was open and about $10,000 worth of fishing equipment was taken. And then on a separate incident, about 13 days later, somebody obviously was watching a boat because they got the hidden key that was outside, and then took about $13,000 of the electronic fishing reels and rods. And then the Marine Unit, we did an action plan up by the Middle River, targeting some of the jet ski rentals. We're getting a lot of complaints in that area about jet skis up on plane, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Some of the rental agencies, the private rentals that people are getting online, taking up a lot of the dock space there at George English Park. We addressed that, wrote several citations for livery violations. Kind of what we were doing is we were going out with the jet ski rental patrons, and if they didn't have some of the equipment, we would bring them back to the George English, and then we would cite the person who was the management company of the place where they rented the skis, trying to try a different tact of making it a little bit more difficult for them to operate their businesses. especially out of the city parks, which is a loophole. So for those of you who don't know, you can't conduct business in a city boat ramp. But if the business is conducted outside off the property and they just go there to pick up the ski, that's apparently it's acceptable. So a lot of people, what they're doing now, they're renting the skis online. So, you know, it's funny because they'll show, if you look at some of the websites, they'll show like they're, you know, these nice, really marinas and stuff like that, which is not the case at all. They, you know, they have the jet ski behind their house and they take the person's money and then, you know, meet them at George English or at the other parks. And excuse me. But so we did a 2-week operation with that, and we have actually seen a little bit of a decline of the amount of people who are renting out of George English anyway. So, and then I think when the renovation of George English comes up, they're going to be shutting down more of the docks, and you know we'll have to deal with that when that comes along as well. So, does anybody have any questions about that? No? Any other questions? Got to hit your mic.
Of some boats docked along the river down by the tunnel or something. Do you have any comments or?
So, yeah, I looked into that and I contacted some people over at Building and Permitting, and then also the director of Department of Sustainable Development. Now, he didn't get my questions until later in the day, but I did speak to him on the phone. He didn't have a whole lot of answers for me. He looked over some of the documents that I sent him. It looks like they were supposed to put up some railing along that area in front of what is it? The Icon. Eon. They were supposed to put up rails. That was part of the permitting process with DEP, and apparently the city also agreed with that. He said he was familiar with it, didn't remember the specifics of it. The building inspector who was working that actual location is no longer with the city, so he wasn't able to contact him to find out exactly what happened. But it does sound like that there is a how do I say this? I don't want to say that they were supposed to do it yet because he hasn't confirmed that 100%. Also, DEP had something to do with that, made the requirements, the stipulations that they had to have rails up there and there couldn't be any boats docking. So he's going to look into it. I'm going to get more information. I can update you because you had the specific question for me as I hear more from him. But it looks positive, like they're going to have to put some railings up there. And in my opinion, if you put the railings up, they're not going to be able to dock there because they're not going to be able to get off their boats. So that's all I have at this time.
One of those pictures was a little water taxi type vessel running around. I don't think it was one of Bill's, but do we know anything? You know, he had a rather crude sign.
Yeah, he didn't have the picture that I saw. There was no phone number or anything on there. I don't know. I asked my guys, nobody's ever seen him before, so I don't know where he came from. In the picture, it didn't look like he was actually tied up. It looks like he was driving by, right?
It's told he had just this 3 people just gotten off the boat behind the Icon there, and you can see how close he is to the marina or to the dock as he's leaving. And it looks like the sign, you know, water taxi was painted on with a paintbrush or something. And
it's like, we'll work for food.
I think that was on the other side
water
of the
taxi
sign.
for food, right? No, in the picture, there's no FLs, there's no name, there's no phone number, anything like that. So I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, that just to go on record, the the Icon, when they were going to start, they were calling it a marina in the beginning, and they wanted to have dockage there. That came before this board, and it was rejected. The Marine Industry Association got involved also with the Coast Guard, and in looking at the traffic, because that area really is a turning basin or a holding basin for boats waiting for the bridge to go up river. Right. And it can be very hairy right there with the current going. And with boats sticking out into the river, it would be a large safety issue. So one of the stipulations of that permit going forward for the Icon and for the Riverwalk, actually having the Riverwalk extend out into the canal, was that dock would not be allowed to have dockage on it. It was strictly to be Riverwalk, a sidewalk over the water. So it's a major safety issue as far as if boats do start docking there. Just want to put that on the record.
I agree.
Thank you. Is there any more for Sergeant Mills?
Mayor, you gotta turn your mic on.
Yes, Sergeant, I had a question for you, and this came from the Broward County Marine Advisory Committee meeting today. Are you aware, do you work on the MLAG grant proposal? And do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, we work the MLAG, which is the Enhanced Law Enforcement Marine Grant. So what that allows us to do, it gives us, the officers, the opportunity to work in the off hours. So normally what we do during the week, I'll have an officer who, our shift is from 7 to 5. So I'll have an officer who finishes shift, and then they'll just stay over and patrol. And the grant pays probably about 75% of the cost for that, where we wouldn't normally have officers out on the water at that time. And then on the weekends, we have 4 zones. We have officers who come in and work on the weekends. The only stipulation is that you can't have 2 officers in the zone at the same time, which obviously allows us to spread out a little bit further. So we've been doing that for, I don't know, Cliff, how many years? 20 some years?
Yeah, as long as I've been on the board, 15 years.
Yeah,
At
so
least.
I think it even goes back a little bit further than that. So we put in our application for another year, a certain amount of hours, which they always are kind enough to grant us the hours we ask for, if not more. And then as well, they give us, I believe, 2 training slots to do some law enforcement training. It usually rotates on a basic course to an advanced course. And we're not the only department that does it. Most of the other agencies in Broward County who actually have waterways, Wilton Manors, as a matter of fact, actually works the grant as well. And they have a company that comes in and teaches law enforcement classes and marine aspect of law enforcement. So it's a huge benefit to the city, because once again, it allows the officers to work, probably. I have officers who come in on the weekends who will work 10 to 15 hours on their day off and work the grant during the weekend on a Saturday or Sunday, which we wouldn't normally have that many officers there. I just had one of my officers just retired. So now instead of having the 8 officers that I'm supposed to have, I'm down to 6 officers. So the grant really helps out with my staffing. So
Sergeant, there was a question, one question they wanted me. So there's you put in for, let's say, 144,000 for the grant year. And I guess this past cycle, you used 78% of that. And I guess the question is just, is there going to be any slippage because your force is down a little bit in trying to meet all those hours? They just had some concerns that will you be able to replace those officers and get the hours back?
So I would say that probably is going to be a slippage, because I've been told that this time we have 22 vacancies in the department, and the practice is to shore up patrol before you start doing other units. So I don't see us getting anybody in the near future. But one thing I will say is that in addition to the officers who work in the unit currently, officers who have left the unit in good standing are allowed to work the the grant as well, as long as they keep up their certifications. So I have 3 other officers, sometimes 4, who come in and work as well. So, but one of the officers who was retiring, he was the guy who worked it probably at a minimum once a week, if not twice a week. So yeah, you'll see a decline for sure.
Okay. And on the non-MLEG patrol hours, will there be a decrease in just the regular patrol hours, do you think?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Do you think on the MLEG hours, you kind of explained there might be, but on the normal hours that are non-MLEG hours, will there be a decrease in your normal coverage out on the water on just your normal shifts?
Well, so the way it works, we have a minimum of 2 officers per shift per day minimum. So the squad that he was working on had a 4-man squad. So now they have a 3-man squad. So we'll have coverage, but obviously when we go 1 man down, there'll be less hours, man hours on the water, but we'll still have people on the water. We're required to have 2 guys on the water at all times anyway. So,
thank you.
Any more questions for Sergeant Mills? Thank you very much for your time. I assume there's no fire report today? I can't see any.
Correct, no fire report, correct.
Okay, wonderful. So let's move on to the Broward County Land Use Plan and Seawall implications. Is Dr. Nancy Glassman with us? Or Gassman, sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be sharing my screen. Okay, are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Great. So today I'm coming before you to talk a little bit about what we call the Seawall Ordinance. The last time I was before you for this board related to the Seawall Ordinance was in 2016. And at that time, an ordinance was adopted that set the minimum seawall elevation at 3.9 feet NAVD. The ordinance recommended design of seawalls for future height adjustments up to 5 feet. It also set an allowable maximum height of the seawall and an associated dock, which was tied to the property's base flood elevation. It required seawall reconstruction to a minimum elevation if the substantial repair threshold of 50% was triggered. It required all property owners to maintain their seawalls in good repair. And you could be cited if you did not keep it in good repair. You also could be cited if you were allowing tidal waters to enter your property and then exit it and impact others, allowing for 365 days for completion of repairs if cited. It allowed for the docks to extend up to 10 inches above the adjacent seawall under certain conditions, and it also addressed floating docks. So that was our 2016 Seawall Ordinance. It was fairly unique and for the Broward County area. So Broward County took on a project with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to look at flood management throughout the Broward County coastal waterways in order to make a decision about whether we needed a regionally consistent height for tidal barriers throughout the area. The result of that study drove a change in the Broward County Regional Tidal Barrier Standard. The county adopted that standard, and they also adopted it into their land use plan, which required a 5-foot minimum elevation for all tidal barriers. And as part of their comprehensive plan, land use plan requirement, all coastal municipalities outlined in this graphic in the yellow are required to adopt a new ordinance which is consistent with the county's ordinance in terms of the elevation of seawalls, banks, berms, and other tidal barriers associated with any given property. And so what I'm bringing before you today is a change in our Seawall Ordinance in order to be consistent with the Broward County Ordinance. And that requires, again, that the new minimum elevation of tidal barriers, including seawalls, be at a five foot elevation. When you consider the regional sea level rise projection that was adopted by the City Commission in the spring of 2020, this particular projection is in the NAVD datum. And you can see that currently sea level rise is close to 0 feet NAVD. When you consider the amount of rise over the next 30 to 50 years, which is essentially the age of a seawall, and you consider that we are having more extreme high tides over time, the idea is that 5 foot elevation provides for a protective measures for those homes from sea level rise for that expected life cycle of the seawall itself. So the key modifications that will come with the change in the ordinance that has been provided to you would be to extend the elevation requirements, not to just seawalls, but any type of tidal barrier, to require a minimum elevation of 5 feet for new or substantially repaired tidal barriers. It does allow for structures permitted before January of 2035 to be built lower, but they must be designed in order to allow for those new structures to be elevated by 2050. And there's also an interesting requirement that tidal barriers built where there were no previous seawalls, so some sort of a natural bank, that they have to provide some type of habitat enhancement on the waterward face of that new structure. And they finally, as part of that ordinance, we are encouraged to incorporate living shoreline features wherever possible. And again, the word is encouraged and not mandated or required. The final interesting aspect of our compliance with the Broward County Ordinance is that starting immediately, there is a required disclosure for contracts of the sale of real estate on waterways where a tidal barrier may be part of that property. And that disclosure requires individuals who are purchasing the property to understand what those requirements are for those tidal barriers on the property moving forward. So the things that haven't changed in our seawall ordinance as amended and proposed are that the seawall reconstruction to a minimum elevation is still required if there is a 50% repair. The requirements to maintain your seawall in good repair and the ability to be sited if tidal waters are leaving your property is still intact. And a quick note on the maximum height, a revised proposed version was provided to Andrew this afternoon, which he distributed. And we have added a provision that also describes what the maximum height of the seawalls can be. The maximum height was addressed in the previous ordinance, and as we were making modifications of this ordinance, it was inadvertently left out. And so that provision has been added back in to describe what the maximum height of the seawall may be. And it's consistent with the base flood elevation of the property. To help you understand how this is being applied, this before and after picture is the seawall on Isle of Palm. This is a city project, and all new city projects related to city-owned seawalls were already using the standard of 5 feet NAVD as the minimum elevation height. So you have a sense of what that height looks like in the context of this particular location. But all city projects are already being built to that 5-foot NAVD. The next steps for this proposed ordinance is to consider any comments and feedback that we may receive, request time to present to the Council of Civic Associations, given that the Seawall Ordinance, when it was originally introduced in 2016, was a significant public outreach effort, that there was great interest in what the city was proposing. Keeping in mind, of course, that at this point we have to come into compliance with the county ordinance. Because this is part of the urban land development regulations, we will have to present the ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Board. And following their approval or recommendation, it will go before the City Commission for first and second reading. And then it's usually implemented within 10 days. Dwayne Spence, our city attorney, is here to be able to answer any questions related to any of the legal aspects of this particular proposed ordinance. And I will do my best to answer any technical questions. And should it be in the board's interest to do so, we would appreciate a motion to recommend the approval of the proposed amendments on the Seawall Ordinance, so that we can be consistent with the requirement from the Broward County Land Use Code regarding new title barriers. And so with that, I'll conclude my presentation and thank you for your time to present to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Gassman. Do we have any questions from for Dr. Gassman from the board? I don't hear any questions. Would someone like to make a motion to suggest to the City Commission that this is approved?
Actually, I do have a question, if we can first. The one is the 365-day. I know that was in the previous form as well, but I know that right now from neighbors in Rio Vista, there are seawalls that are going in now that are 1 year out as far as from construction. You know, and I know that if we start turning up the heat on making more people to do seawalls, that lead time could go out even further. You know, so was that considered, or is that just part of what the county is making us do? Or because I can see that that's going to go beyond 365 days.
So the 365 days, as you correctly noted, was in our original ordinance. And when the county was considering creating a template ordinance, they substantially used portions of our ordinance as a foundation for the development of their ordinance. When this came back to us to be consistent, there was a comment that the 365 days was not adequate. And again, I'll allow our legal team to opine, but our thought was that we have to be consistent with the county ordinance, and they also use the 365 days in their language. Mr. Spence, do you have any other comment on that?
I don't. The county policy provides for us to be consistent with the adopted model ordinance in Chapter 39 of the Broward County Code, which has a 365-day time period. To the extent that we have to completely model the we have to model the ordinance after the Broward County ordinance, but to the extent that we can deviate is kind of something that we're still analyzing.
So to answer your question, we can take that under consideration, but we have to determine with the county whether that is a situation where we can deviate in terms of providing for additional time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any further questions from the board?
I have one comment from before, and actually last time you were here, Doctor, I had asked about this, was the idea of the hydrostatic pressure and the on the Cordova Road in particular was, was this going to work? And I actually witnessed in November with the king tides, and this was after the northern end of the seawall was completed, the water was coming up through the ground immediately. There was no delay on the tide as it was coming up. So I know that it's supposed to be working, but I don't know that it is going to. And that's more of a comment than a question. But I think that the jury is out on the success of how this seawall is going to actually work, as opposed to raising the road.
Right, and certainly during the fall of the year, we had complications from both rainfall and from some extreme high tides, and the seawall wasn't completed. And so there were still gaps in the seawall where water was coming in behind it freely with the tide. And so at this point, we are substantially complete, and there are some spring tides where we'll have an opportunity to see just how effective the seawall is against those kinds of concerns.
Yeah, if there is an engineering issue, with it, would that be on the engineering company that the city hired or the seawall contractor? Or in other words, if it doesn't work, who's going to be responsible?
The engineer of record.
Okay.
Dr. Gassman, this is Roseanne Lovell. Question for you. Just confirming that riprap is considered an acceptable habitat enhancement?
It is.
Okay, and if that is provided, then nothing else, no other enhancement would be needed?
This is a new section of the code that Broward County has had in their code for some time. And since it's new to us in the city, we will work with them to understand what they have approved previously. But my understanding is that, yes, riprap is an appropriate enhancement on the wet face of the seawall to provide that habitat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion to suggest that the City Commission approves this plan? Anyone? Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Gassman, and we will move on to the next item.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is Ben with us? Ben Rogers to talk about Los Alamos Marine update.
Yes, good afternoon. I guess good evening, everyone. Ben Rogers, Director of Transportation. I will load my screen here in 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about the Los Alamos Marina project, the pre-development efforts. If you're following along with the City Commission, the last presentation we gave is really the most up-to-date information, and we will kind of go through each of those items tonight, and I'm here to take some questions and comments based on those questions. So right now, staff at all levels, director level, the city attorney's office, city manager's office, are looking at all of the agreements that are needed to take action for the marina development to move forward. And so I'm just going to go one by one and read these off. If you have any questions, feel free to ask at this time, or I can take questions at the end. But the parking agreement was approved in July of 2020. That was an agreement that allowed the marina to have some dedicated spots in the parking garage to support their operations. There's 3 different tiers of parking spaces depending on what they need. They can scale up with their operations. So that has been done and completed. We are working right now on these remaining items, negotiating with Suntex, the developer, also working with the state on some of these items. The revocable license is a pretty standard process where it identifies all the right-of-way impacts during construction and development. So this will have the detour plan, the pedestrian pass, things like that, and that will be going forward commission. We're shooting for a meeting in March at this time. Another requirement of the marina was for them to relocate and replace the pump station that's out there right now. So this is managed by Public Works. It's aged and in a failing condition, and this requirement is something that they will have to do, and it's one of the first things they'll do when they get out there. Another condition that was put on the developer was to make turn lane modifications at Lost Little Circle and Birch Road. So that's right outside in front of the parking garage right now. And that's so there would be a right-hand turn and a left-hand turn lane to help with traffic congestion. The next one is an item to waive the competitive solicitation. So in order for us to move forward with Suntex, the developer, taking action on the D31 pump station and the turn lane modifications, we've got to just have a waiver from the City Commission for us to forego the competitive solicitation process and assign the work to Suntex. The two big ones right now are the Fourth Amendment to the ground lease and the Upland deed amendment. What's being proposed right now are modifications that came out of Suntex's interactions with the state. Things that clarified, submerged land rights, upland deed, things like that. So we're looking at those now from our city attorney's office to make sure everything is in our best interest and kind of making sure that the game didn't change a whole lot. In addition to those, we're also looking to lease the marina trailer. The facilities trailer is out there right now to Suntex, so they can utilize that as a construction trailer during the development period. And then we're also compiling a conference presentation for March. So the item of the marina would be discussed during the daytime meeting, and then these items would go in the evening to be voted upon. This slide here is just an image of what the current site plan kind of looks like. You can see there were some modifications and some changes. There was a moving of the riparian rights and a deal that Suntex did with the Portofino, which allowed for more dock space to the north. The graphic in the top right corner is just showing the current conditions in the parking lot and what would be dredged out and become dock space. And in closing, the schedule is still tentative. We've been trying to advance these items each month, and due to legal considerations, we've pushed them out until we feel comfortable with putting them on the agenda. Right now, like I said earlier, we're looking at a March commission date. Once Suntex takes occupancy, which we're looking at April and May, they're going to start with utility work, water pipes and sewer pipes and lift stations. They do believe that they would be in a maintenance of traffic 15 to 30 days after they take occupancy, so the detours would go up at that point. And then we are coordinating behind the scenes now on all the public outreach efforts. They have launched a website. They brought on GAR Solutions for public relations, and then the city has their own avenue and channels that they'll be facilitating as well. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ben.
I got a question on pump station stuff over there. Last month I was looking at it. To me, it's what we're looking at $2 or $3 million for the relocation of that pump station. And I mean, that's the city's end, and Suntex is only putting up 600 grand. So that's like 2,600,000 to relocate the pump station. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's close. So our cost estimate right now is about $2.9 million for the entire relocation and replacement. The city is looking to put $2.5 million into it, and that's the cost of the components and the pumps and all the systems that go into it. What Suntex is on the hook for is the relocation of the pump. So the pump was at end of life, and when I believe one of the two pumps is actually in a failing state or near a failing state. So the city had the obligation to replace the components, and Suntex has the responsibility to relocate it to the new area.
It seems like a pretty high ticket.
Yeah, I mean, I don't work in the Public Works Department, but in discussions we've had with the Public Works Director, it seemed pretty much in line, and most of the cost estimates and scope work that were proposed by the developer align with the city understanding of what it would cost us to do if we had to do it internally.
Yeah, Ben, is there any discussion on a temporary pump out during the construction period?
I'm not too involved in the operation side of what the marina will do pre or during or post construction. Most of my aspects are on facilitating the agreements. I think Eric Metz was going to join tonight. I'm not sure if he did or not, but I can follow up on that.
Okay, yeah, because we have a situation of, the pump out stations of the city are frequently are not working. And, with that one going down as well, we may have a mess literally on our hands as far as the the waterway quality of that, because people will dump their sewage.
Yeah, so
this
Mr.
is
Chair-
Eric Metz. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, good evening. This is Eric Metz, owner's rep for Los Olas SMI for Suntex Marine. So I think to your point, that's exactly how we're phasing this. Is we have to get the pump station moved first and get it basically powered up and working before we go ahead and demo the old one. So we are at all costs trying to avoid any temporary pumping of the waste. It's just there's a sheer volume of flow that goes to that pump station, which is substantial. There may be a potential where we have to do it on a very short basis, like hours would be the goal, not looking at something like weeks or days, just because it's just too much flow to temporarily try to reroute that.
Okay, that's great to hear. Very, very pleased. Thanks. I had one other question. I believe that, Ben, that you had gone over this on the Fourth Amendment and the Upland deed thing. Does that have to do with the submerged land lease with the state and the 50% of the profit going to the state clause? Has that been worked out? Or because I know that in the beginning, that was one of the most major issues with that property and as far as going private public.
Yeah, so back in I believe it was in September. Actually, was it September or October, Eric?
September.
In September of 2020, Suntex went to the state and did all of their approvals with the state. So everything has been kind of worked out between Suntex and the state. And those conditions are being now integrated into the agreements between the city and Suntex. And that's what the city's reviewing at this point, just to make sure that everything is still similar to the original proposal and outcome for the city.
Okay.
We have any other questions from the board or from the public?
I have a question. Ben, has the cabinet approved this yet? Do I hear you saying, or they're reviewing with Suntex? And you participated in any of these meetings with the cabinet?
So the cabinet, and Eric can probably speak to it better than I can, but my understanding is the cabinet has tentatively approved or conditionally approved everything, contingent on the city approving and modifying the ground lease and the Upland deed reverter. So once we finalize those at a city level, then Suntex can then go back and get everything finalized with the state.
And that's correct. This is Eric Metz again. It's sort of like a conditional approval, if you will. Sort of like a DRC process with the city where you have to go back for a final check off of staff. And that is what we're doing now. They requested kind of two pertinent items. One was just a small revision to the ground lease itself to make sure it was just consistent or copacetic and flowed with the way the state wanted to see the language read. And then also on the Upland deed is finalizing the language there on really the 50% issue. It did go down to 15% for Upland and 6% for wet or for water, consistent with the submerged land lease. That was the difference there.
Eric, do you have a time frame for completion?
Construction, once we start, which is again contingent on us finalizing this stuff with the city and also going back to the state, and then Army Corps and everything else kind of comes after that for the final release of permits. Overall duration is somewhere between 18 and 24 months. The reason I say a range is because we do have buffer in our schedule to accommodate the pump station. It's super complex. It's way more complex than a lot of folks realize, and so we want to give ourselves room there. But the marina itself is pretty quick, as you guys know, to actually build all that out. The buildings will probably trail the marina just a little bit in terms of the CO. That's roughly 18 to 24 months with some wiggle in between there for some unforeseen items.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or the public?
I have a question for Ben that's not pertaining to the Las Olas Marina. So if we could, Ben, if I could ask you that when we conclude is a parking issue elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, it's all right, Mr. Chair. I'm welcome to take any questions.
That's fine, sure.
Yeah, you want to finish the issue for Las Olas Marina, Ed?
Yeah, that's fine. We can, since he's here now, we'd usually do that under new business, but we don't want to take Ben's time later on, so we can address that right now.
During the past weekend, we're in copies of communication to the city from the temporary, well, it wasn't temporary, the changing of the parking down on the North River Drive, allowing the valet staging for the Icon restaurant or whatever it's Salt 7 rather. This was done in an abrupt manner. Residents of the building were, it was pretty congested down there. Long-term dockage customers with boats there are entitled to 2 or 3 parking spots. They've been removed. Why was this handled this way, and how permanent is this, Ben?
Yeah, so there was a lot of neighborhood feedback. So myself with Commissioner Sorensen met with some stakeholders. We had a couple of meetings. We walked the site. We've gone out there and done some things. We've incorporated the Parks and Rec department in some of our conversations. But there's a lot of concern, and I totally understand the justification for the concerns. And so what we did to try and kind of put proof to concept with this is we issued Salt 7 a temporary valet permit that lasts through March 15th of 2021. So they have about 4 to 6 weeks of operations to kind of prove themselves, to work out any issues and see if what they propose can work and fit in with everything and adjust to the issues. And if not, then we'll have to meet with them and figure out what the future holds for their parking and valet operations.
I think someone's muted.
How's that? No? Oh. I don't understand, Ben, how we can take the parking away from boats that have been there for lengthy periods of time, and they're entitled to 2 or 3 parking spots. Why do we have to offer the restaurant relief for their valet? Other restaurants don't have that situation.
Right. No, I totally understand. What we tried to do or attempted to do, and like I said, there's always going to be some wrinkles when you roll things out, was to provide the valet with an overflow area. The overflow area, I believe, is 4 or 5 spaces, the most easternly spaces in that kind of cutout area that you're referencing. This last weekend was their grand opening, so I think they had a lot of peak demand. We've already relayed our concerns. We relayed the communications that we received from both neighbors and from city staff to them, so they're aware of it. And we're going to continue to monitor it. And like I said, if we can't come to a resolution and can't make things work, then we'll have to reevaluate their permits in the next couple of weeks.
Well, we have pictures here taken in the daytime, long before the 5 o'clock, where this was supposed to go in effect, and they had already put cones up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can forward me those kind of pictures and those kind of comments, that will just help our discussions when we have to make that decision. You know, I'll be in contact with the district commissioner and the city manager to make that decision. So any information you want to forward to me, I will take that. And as we make our review and assessment, I'll include those materials in that decision.
Thank you very much.
Ben, I had a question for Ben also. I noticed down at the wharf, the dockage at the wharf where the anticipation was, the boat is gone, there's taped off, but that the wharf is using it as dockage for their own. What is the plan or the future for the dockage along that seawall where that is?
That's a great question. That's something I'm not privy to or a part of. I can work with both Parks and Rec and our Department of Sustainable Development, Anthony Fajardo maybe, to figure out what the permitting is and who has the use right for that space.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate it. Moving forward.
I was just saying.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, closing for the marina item. Keep your eyes on the agendas, but you know, we're aiming for the month of March to bring all that back to commission for final review and approval.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night. Do we have someone representing the Eakins on the 2407 Aqua Vista Boulevard project? If you're speaking, you might want to unmute.
Hi, yes, I am Jenna Robbins.
Hi, Jen. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it okay?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is well tonight. I thank you for the opportunity to present this application for a waterway waiver. As I stated earlier, my name is Jenna Robbins with the Chappelle Group, and I'm presenting on behalf of the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Troy and Thais Eakins, located at 2407 Aqua Vista Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. And from this aerial photograph, you can see their property is located along the Middle River as it forks off from the Intercoastal Waterway, with Sunrise Key Boulevard located to the northwest, Intercoastal Drive located to the northeast, and their property is located between A1A and Federal Highway. This is a larger scale aerial view of the property to depict the large width of the canal which their property resides on. And this canal also exhibits heavy boat traffic. At the rear of their property along the Middle River Canal, there is a seawall and a PVC dock that exists that is in need of repair. And this photograph was taken from the east side of their property facing west. And then this photograph was taken from the western side of their property facing east along the Middle River. And here's another aerial photograph taken from the Broward County Property Appraiser website. It's taken from the north side of the property facing south. And here you can see that in addition to the existing seawall and marginal dock, they have 2 wood mooring piles. As you can also see in this aerial photograph, taken from the east facing west along the Middle River. And this is a plan set depicting the existing conditions of the site. There is a 100 linear foot concrete seawall and a 962 square foot PVC dock that is to be removed, as well as 2 existing wood mooring piles that are to be removed. And there is 1 existing wet slip. The entire proposed project at their property includes the installation of a 100 linear foot concrete cap overpour, a concrete marginal dock, and the installation of a platform boat lift and a platform jet ski lift. The proposed platform boat lift and jet ski lift will extend approximately 34.5 feet from the property line, which the applicant is requesting a waiver of 9.5 feet for each structure. In addition, the platform boat lift is located at least 10 feet from the riparian rights line so that it is outside of the side yard setback. Then this is a cross-sectional view of the proposed project demonstrating that both of the lifts will extend approximately 34.5 feet from the property line. There will also be no guiding poles on top of the boat lift, only the bunks for the vessels to rest on. And here's the same plan set overlaid on top of an aerial showing the existing dock to be removed, the 2 mooring piles to be removed, and the existing 1 wet slip. And this is also the proposed conditions overlaid on top of an aerial, and I've depicted the 2 proposed platform lifts as pink so they are easily distinguishable from the other structures, which the applicant is requesting a waiver for as they extend 34.5 feet into the waterway from the property line. And then this exhibit demonstrates the extraordinary width of the waterway at 515 feet. And also the pink structures, again, the proposed boat lift and the jet ski lift at 34.5 feet from the property line. Compared to the other structures along Aqua Vista Boulevard, the proposed jet ski lift and boat lift at 34.5 feet from the property line conform with the distances these other structures extend into the waterway. There are lifts and mooring piles along Aqua Vista that extend about 31 to 40 feet into the waterway from the property line, and these distances were approximated using the Broward County Property Appraiser website. So overall, the applicant is requesting a waiver of 9.5 feet for the platform boat lift and jet ski lift to extend a total of 34.5 feet from the property line, since the city code does not allow mooring structures not to extend more than 25 feet into the waterway. However, the extraordinary circumstances in which the applicant is requesting this waiver is that all the proposed structures and piles will not exceed 30% the width of the waterway. They actually extend only about 6% the width of the waterway. Thus, the project will not impede navigation within the Middle River. In addition, these proposed structures are necessary to safely moor the residents' vessels, especially during high wind events and severe weather, as well as large wakes generated by the frequent boat activity exhibited on the canal, as this is not in the wake zone. In addition, since these lifts will essentially lift the vessels out of the water, it'll allow light penetration and thus the protection of natural resources. Lastly, the city code does allow one mooring device that is permitted for each 100 feet of lot width, which would be the boat lift, and then one lift designed and used solely for the lifting of a personal watercraft, which would be the jet ski lift. There are 5 letters of support in favor of the applicant's project, 4 of which that are located along the Middle River itself. There is no record of existing waivers in the immediate vicinity of the applicant's property, but there are numerous ones along the Middle River Canal to the north along Middle River Drive and Northeast 20th Avenue, and to the south along North Birch Road, which is on the Intercoastal Waterway. Compared to the other existing waivers, the applicant is requesting a waiver for the least amount of distance for their structures to extend into the waterway at 34.5 feet. Compared to the other waivers that are at 39.3 feet at a minimum and 125 feet at the maximum. And with that, I thank you for your time and consideration, and we'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Jenna. Do we have any questions from the board?
Andrew, I noticed you don't have any pros or cons from any the neighbors.
I noticed all properties within 300 feet and received no feedback.
Okay. And I was not under the understanding that you could have a boat lift and a personal watercraft lift.
That's the way the code's written.
Yeah, I just have a comment. The watercraft lift, it seems pretty large. It's 20 feet by 14 feet and 5,000 pounds. How many jet skis is it supposed to pick up?
I believe 1 or 2.
Okay. Just as rather large.
It's enough room for paddleboards and kayaks to be located on top as well, possibly, or enough room to walk around.
What's the size of the vessel that they're planning to put on the lift, please?
It's a 35-foot boat, I believe.
Is that boat parallel to the shore? Not perpendicular, right? The boat
No,
lift.
it will be more, the boat lift is perpendicular to the seawall, as well as the vessel on top will be moored.
How far is the boat stick out in front of the boat lift when it's on there? You got a 35-foot boat on there. You're actually asking for a variance for the boat lift for the boat and the lift. The reason I was saying that is because if there's a boat docked at a dock and the pilings and everything are in front, the ordinance is that the furthest projection out into the river is what you're allowed. So in other words, if I have a 5-foot dock and a boat with 15 feet wide and I have it parallel, I'm fine. If I turn it perpendicular, I'd have to get a variance because the boat actually sticks out a lot further than what you're requesting for the variance.
Hey, this is Ty.
That you're asking.
Norbert, this is Tyler Chappelle. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Tyler.
So the boat lift is 34.5 feet and the boat's about 35 feet. So if anything, it's going to be bow in as well. So the only thing that would be, can you hear me okay?
The boat will be bow in?
The boat will be bow in.
Okay.
Is the way it's proposed. So the only thing that really would be hanging over would be the engines, if any, and that's how it's designed. It won't be like the neighbor next door, where you have the boat stern to with considerable amount of the bow hanging over the dock or the lift portion.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Just a question, Tyler or Jenna, just following up with the last question. How far can the boat extend into the waterway in that location?
I believe a boat could extend 30% the width of the waterway according to city code.
Okay, thank you.
Which would be a lot more than 30 feet.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're at 6% right now as proposed.
Any other questions from the board? We will open it up to the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak about this project? And we come back to the board. Any other comments or questions from the board? If not, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Roseanne Lovell with second.
Thank you. Shall we do I guess we'll have to do a roll call vote because we're all kind of remote.
Okay. Mr. Barry?
Approve, yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Ms. Lovell?
Yes.
Ms. McGowan? Is she still here? Okay, she's off. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Morley? He's gone as well. Mr. Rotella?
Approve.
Mr. Walker?
Approve.
Mr. Witten?
Yes, approved.
Vice Chair Strobel?
Yes, approved.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, everyone.
The next item would be any old business to discuss. Any old business items?
Mr. Chairman, I have some old business I'd like to bring forward.
All right, you have the floor.
Following up on Jimmy's comments a few moments ago about docking up at the western end, I guess, where the lofts are. It's my understanding that the city marine office was told to not use those slips or rent them out effective immediately. That was, what, a week ago or so. That evening or the next day, the docks were being used by the Upland restaurant or bar, which included rafting off. Coming a little further to the east, there was space there that was occupied by a tenant who had a long history of lack of payment to the city, and it was questionable as to what property what areas he controlled or didn't control. And I think would be beneficial if next month we could receive a site plan of the city marina along the river and exactly the condition of the dockage, how it's identified, whether we're getting revenue from it, and how the revenue stream is coming into the city. It appears that some of the revenue being collected is not going to the city. And also on the commercial boats down towards the tunnel. They're there for a reason, due to buses that arrive when the cruise ships will start running again. It's a close turning around basin for them. There's a pump out facility across the river or adjacent to them. And they were put there for those reasons and purposes. And when you hear people say, well, we're just going to move the commercial boats so that we can have dockage for restaurants or some other use. It needs to be identified, and I think I'd like to see a list of what is the permitted and what our facilities provide. It'd just be updating. It's been many years since we saw anything.
I agree. Are we allowing the wharf to charge for dockage like they do in Miami, even though that's public dockage? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Andrew?
This is Andrew. I don't know what we are allowing. I know what we were told as marine facilities. We were told that the area was closed adjacent to the wharf and the other restaurant that's there. So we placed signage out there and discontinued selling dockage at that location.
It'd be nice to get some clarification if they're allowed to charge. I know in Miami they charge an astronomical amount, and if the city's not getting any of that, it'd be really interesting to find out why we're allowing a restaurant to do that. Is there a way we can find out if they're allowing to charge? Because I know in the beginning they tried, then they were shut down from charging, and now that they're reopened, I'm not sure what the status is.
I will look into that.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
So was that dock closed this weekend because of the wharf opening in COVID, or was it closed because you guys said close it, nobody ties up?
So, Bill, we were selling a portion of that dock up until last week, and we're told that we should close it down due to structural concerns at the western end, which is the area we were selling. So it was closed down at that point. We placed signage out there indicating it was closed.
I just saw signage going all the way from the Rivertail restaurant down to the end, and I didn't know if that was a COVID thing because of the wharf opening or.
So yeah, it was shut down. We were told that your pickup drop-offs in general were allowable, but not to allow vessels and not to sell space at that location.
Sure.
Do we have a determination of the dockage in front of the old Bryan House or whatever it's called now?
We can provide. There was a Riverwalk. There was a license agreement which spoke to that.
Yeah.
That we understand is still intact.
But are we getting any revenue from the boats to tie up there?
We're not selling. We're not selling the space in front of the restaurant, if that's what you're asking.
Somebody is or was at times. I mean,
we historically did.
Yeah.
But we can get you the details of that license agreement if you'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if. I'm sorry, you're still talking? You kind of broke up.
Here's John.
I think Andrew is misspoke a little bit. I don't think he understood your question, Barry. It's the Bryan Homes there's still a tenant there. We do on occasion lease those spaces in front of there for overflow. They don't have power. So on occasion when we're full, let's say it was New Year's or something like that, someone would be willing to take it for a night or two without power. So, and that's it. Now, the other side of it where the Los Olas Riverfront is, Andrew's right on, so.
do you know is the tenant you refer to, are they occupying the Bryan homes, or is it?
I don't know what the situation is there. That's not under our.
No, the Upland, but the dock out there, you clarified that.
Right now, the agreement that the tenant has is still in use. And there are some restrictions on the tenant and the number of hours they can use it, and number of days and things like that. And they're supposed to pay 50% of the dock rate, but we haven't seen it.
Well, that's why I'd like to see if we can get a updated site plan of what.
Yeah. I mean, that tenant is no longer there with the boat, but he was current on his dockage with us when he was parking it there. So, I mean, I think he goes in and out occasionally because he has use of the dock for special events like a wedding or something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other old business or new business?
Yeah, back to the icon, that walkway and the icon, those pedestals on there, probably to help the Marine Patrol and stuff out. Is there a way that we can get signage put on there, no dockage on the pedestals? That there's a few pedestals, even though there's not a handrail all across that. Could we get signage on there that no dockage allowed or something similar to that?
I thought I already said that, but I could be mistaken.
There's no signs on that.
I think there's 2 little signs out there.
There is? Okay.
Yeah, this is Andrew. The signage and fencing is part of that permit, and that's what's being looked into right now.
Okay, it's been a while since they were over there, so I didn't see anything the last time that I was over there. So there is signage there? Okay, fine.
Okay. Any other old or new business?
Just to note, March 6th kicks off the Broward County Waterway cleanup. A little bit different this year, but you could go online to the MIASF and check it out.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other old or new business?
We talked about getting an update on the railroad bridge with the test the Coast Guard kept going on. Right now, I see some Brightline trains once in a while are out there doing some like test runs. I still don't think they're opening for a year or so, but it'd be nice to have a clarification on the bridge status, especially as more train lines are being talked about using over the bridge and whatnot.
I did see something that Elon Musk was talking with someone about doing a tunnel, even though we all went for the higher bridge, but I haven't really seen anything else. So it would be good to get an update on where they're heading, if the study is going to be for a tunnel or the taller bridge. Is there any way we can request that, Andrew?
You met with Dean.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
We ought to get an understanding of what the ruling is, because when COVID hit, the Coast Guard was still doing a test on how long the bridge was going to be open or closed. And as I said at the last meeting, I have no idea where that all ended up or what. I don't even know what the ruling is today. Right now, you see anywhere from 11 to 13 freight trains go across that, as it's been for the last 30 plus years. But it's just something we all ought to be aware of. I don't, it was ongoing because life was moving forward at fairly fast pace at that time. But
yeah, I had 2 freights last time I went fishing. I was like, wow, just almost like the Brightline days, but we definitely good to get an update. Any other old or new business? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Be happy to make a motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
Sounds like the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, and have a great month. We'll talk to you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you all.